Hi guys, happy weekend. I just wanted to talk about that horrific incident that happened in Sheffield. So first of all, I want to say rest in peace, Harvey Willgoose. God love him and his poor family. Said that he was a lovely fella. I think he was 15. It's a very tragic and sad incident. The reason why I'm talking about this is because Shawnee K, who you've contributed a lot to this channel, I really appreciate you. I know your predictions for the games every week as well, which you keep giving. But I've talked about Scott Hutchison, and that was very sad. That got me going. If you haven't checked that out, do please. I want to link another video that I made already, because Shawnee was talking about how there were lots of kids warned not to bring weapons into school, like knives, blades, and they had been warned previously. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about the actual incident. You can look it up. It was horrific. Poor young fella lost his life because of blades in school, and that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to be insensitive. But Shawnee, you asked what's my stance on it, the warnings. And look, if you've got kids bringing blades into school, that's extremely dangerous. And if they have the capability to use them as well, for one, don't think anyone brings a blade into school that isn't intending to use it. I remember being in school and, lads that were playing the gangster and all that sort of thing, and say they didn't pay a lad in school for drugs or whatever. We lads bringing knuckle dusters and flick bats, Where the fuck they're getting them, I don't know. Serious weapons though, do you know what I mean? And I remember one lad just showing me what he had in his locker. Like a police level flick bat, or baton, if you're American. Knuckle dusters, and he was putting them on and showing me them, and everything saying what he was going to do with a fella. Saying he was going to break the fella's jaw, and you're there thinking, fucking hell, how does your mind work that way? My mind never worked that way, I was thinking, if someone has a problem with me and they start attacking me, I'll defend myself with whatever's there, but I'm not planning ahead, that kind of way. I'm going to do this and have a weapon with me, just to guarantee that I hurt the person. It's like, what goes through your fucking head that happens? Oh. So, when I talk about Karl Panzram in a video, he had obvious signs of, serious mental illness, but dangerous, I may have said, oh yeah, he was abused, so, he was a child at one point, he deserves sympathy, but I don't think for 1 second that he was safe to be around. Do you know what I mean? Put it this way, if I was in a room with him, I would not take my eyes off him for a second. When I made the video and I said the warden told him, the warden left his baton on the bench, turned his back on Panzram, and Panzram says to him, never turn your back on me again. I would take his advice, be like, don't you fucking worry, I'll never turn my back on you. I'll be watching you like a hawk. I call it, because that's the whole point of these videos, what can we learn from them? Look at that case and see the obvious signs, the warning signs. Reform schools, harsh punishments, all that stuff, did nothing for Karl Panzram. Now, and this is a man born in the 1800s, the late 1800s, but you need to look at the home lives. What were these kids like? What was going on there? Look, you do something like that to a 15-year-old boy, I'm very short on sympathy, but the reality is no normal person does that. Someone has clearly been desensitised to that level of violence. And that speaks to a wider problem. You know, there's too many people out there who are cowardly and think it's okay to go and stick a blade in someone. And we're not harsh enough. In Ireland and the UK, we are definitely not harsh enough with punishments for that sort of behaviour. And if you're a juvenile, you're well aware of this. You know you're not going to be harshly punished. So where I feel like, looking at the case of Karl Panzram, I think it shows you two examples. One, severe punishment doesn't work. It can only make people worse in a lot of cases, and it does. But being lenient and being sympathetic does fuck all either. And like, it's no good to his parents, poor Harvey's parents, when you say, oh, but the kids had a hard life and all that. They're not going to give a fuck, and why should they? Some little fucking scumbag rat has taken a blade to their child and killed him. Like, I'm only 26 and I remember being in school, and as I say, lads were bragging about all the weapons they had in their lockers and all that, selling drugs, thinking they were gangsters and all this shit. And like, this is not the most rough part of Dublin, but of course, what Ireland and the UK do, which I think is the stupidest thing, is council houses. You know, like when my grandparents were, after buying their first house, you know, that was a council house, but you had a name of buying it. So you were proud of that council house. You were like, we work. Working class used to mean you actually had to fucking work. The irony, huh? But now what it is, council houses is piling in lots of people who have drug problems, who have criminal records. And children are growing up around these people, meaning the statistics of them committing crimes and being addicted to drugs is way higher, and they've access to them as well. Like, there were lads in school with me, and like, this is Dublin 16, this is not the roughest part of Dublin. Just want to say, you know, my dad grew up in times where, you know, it was rough around Dublin, and he certainly would have been streetwise from a young age. You know, he certainly knew the areas to avoid, and he was always a very anxious wreck, you know. He wasn't your tough inner city dub, but he was wise, you know, that kind of way. He was like, I know these places, he knew everywhere. He was like a taxi driver. He could tell you everywhere in Dublin. And it's good talking to him, you know, because as I say, we've had trouble connecting before, and that's something, you know, we've had trouble connecting, but it's nice talking to him about areas he's worked in. He worked on the Ballymun flats. He said trolleys and all used to come down the lifts, because he was installing the lifts when he was doing his apprenticeship. He was helping out. He said it was great crack, like, because you used to just see the craziest shit going on. But Ballymun is a good example of a load of, and look, not everyone in council houses is scumbags. That's very harsh to say, but there's criminality where there is poverty. That's a fact. And this was poverty, you know, and there was lots of heroin around, you know what I mean? Lots of fucking heroin. You had mobs of people going around saying pushers out, you know, drug pushers, people who are selling drugs in this area will be attacked, and rightly so. I have no problem with that. If you look at Dublin Gaelic footballer Philly McMahon, he is from Ballymun. His older brother, John, I think was his name, died of heroin overdose. And he talks about it. And he was like, I could have been like that. He speaks about how the addiction to drugs was just around the corner. It was either drugs or it was the guy. Luckily he chose the guy, which is great that he did, you know. Because if he hadn't had that outlet, his brother didn't have the outlet, and cost him his life, God rest his soul. Like, I'm getting a bit off topic, I know, but my dad grew up in tougher times, you know, and we only played his school yesterday in rugby. We beat them, Drimna Castle, but there was a lad from my school that went to Drimna Castle, thought he was a hard man, and there were real hard men in that school. My dad talks about some of the stories, you're like, yeah, any of us went there, we would get our arses handed to us. They were real tough lads, you know, like Drimnagh and Crumlin. They're real tough guys. Dublin 12 would wipe the floor with Dublin 16, where I grew up. I grew up mainly in Ballantyre. Nice area, but I would say it's not necessarily posh, it's just, I say that because it's a badge of honour to not be posh. Nice area, lots of new houses, lots of people moving in, you know. It was basically countryside, and then loads of people moved in, kind of like what they're doing with Corey at the minute. But you had, like anyone that has lived in Ballantyre for 3 generations has a thick Dublin accent. So it's kind of a weird one, you know. Kind of call it a county Dublin accent as opposed to an inner city Dublin accent. But it's not rough, not really. You know, there's parts of it that are, you know. Anyone remember Hillview? Parts of Nutgrove down the road could have been, but in general, like we were right beside Tick Knock. Lovely up there. You walk all the way up and you just sit on the rocks up there and chill out all day. It was great. That did the world of good for my anxiety. All of us, like the mates in the summer, we'd all meet up, we'd go up there, chat shit, you know, eat loads of unhealthy food. That's what I miss, you know, but sadly those activities are not done by people now. You know, it's groups of lads, hordes of fellas, all gathering together, mingling with bad people. And like Dublin 16 and a lad, like they moved in a lot of corporation houses, well, council houses. And from going to an area where people were moving because it was cheaper, you know, it was new, you then put in these people who had ties to the Crumlin Drimnagh feud. You know, like people who were, you know, linked to gangsters in Dublin. And you're kind of going, fucking hell. So you've taken an area that was kind of nice and up and coming, and now you've just thrown this lot in here. Like there were lads in the estate, like thefts went up a lot. Crime did go up, inevitably, you know. And I remember armed guards going in. You think Dublin 16, armed guards? Like when people tell me, oh, it's all posh and everything, I'm like, have you seen it? It's getting bad. People would say Dundrum is posh, and then I was like, have you ever been to Mulvey or Rosemount? Depends on what part you go to, you know. It's not all one way or the other. Like Monkstown would be considered a posh area, and there's a council estate in Monkstown, you know, and it's anything but. But there were lads with samurai swords in their houses, you know, and you're there thinking, fucking samurai swords? Where the fuck did you get that? You know, katanas and all that sort of thing. Like, they had some serious weaponry in their gaffs. The thing is as well, they thought like, oh, you do anything to me and I'll take a fucking blade to you. That's the mentality that you have to think of with this. It's like, what goes through your head, you know? They think I can mouth off to someone, and if they say anything back, I'll threaten them with a weapon. It's a mentality thing, and look what it leads to. Like, tragic consequences. A lad in my brother's class got stabbed over €20 that someone owed him. You know, €20 and a young fella died. That's the reality of what this shit does, you know. So like, Shawnee, just to answer your question there, I feel like the school should be a lot harsher on bad kids. I feel like when there's troubled kids that are depressed and maybe acting out, but you know, you've got to be able to read the signs, versus kids that are genuinely dangerous. You know, ones that are really aggressive, that go around and hunting in packs, basically, intimidating other kids. And these fuckers see a weak, vulnerable, well, they don't, I'm not going to call the kid weak. I don't think he's weak. I think, I just want to clarify, I'm not calling Harvey weak here, not at all. What I mean is he was said to be a nice kid, a good friend. Don't know anything personally about him, but everyone said he was a lovely young fella, and I think that's what people see as a weakness. Just to clarify, they see a nice, popular young fella, and they think I'm jealous of him. could be the case, you know. The identity hasn't been revealed of who did it. And I'm not going to go prying too much, you know. The shooter in Sweden hasn't either. Gee, Sweden has taken a U-turn, hasn't it? Wasn't even going to mention Sweden in this, but Sweden is an example of being too much of a do-gooder for your own good. Went from being one of the safest countries in the world to one of the most dangerous in Europe, practically, what, a year or two? Literally a year. Because there was no deterrent for young foreign males coming in, you know. They were too accepting, and look where it got them. Not harsh enough on crime, and I don't think we're harsh enough on it here in Ireland. Speaking from personal experience, like, I remember kids that would threaten young fellas on a regular basis, and I remember getting in trouble for basically just standing up for myself. You're the big fella picking on a little kid. Yeah, I had a bit of a temper on me, sure, but normally I would sit there and not bother anyone. Then I start thinking, for my own safety, I have to, like, that's the thing, for my own safety, I have to go off with these young fellas who are bad young fellas. I was almost attracted to that because I thought, these are the cool kids, these are the ones getting all the action, do you know what I mean? So speaking from my own personal experience now, thankfully I've got fucking empathy, you know, and a fucking brain in here, and realise these yokes are a bunch of useless cunts doing nothing with their lives, and if I waste my time with them, I'll be exactly like them. They're not loyal. They would drop me like a hot snot if it suited them. I'm not wasting my time on them, do you know? But they would turn on you. One of them tried to have me battered before, provoke me, so he had justification for a load of lads hopping in and attacking me. Like, that mindset just sickens me. Trying to rile someone up so they lose their cool, they hit you first, you just push them, and then you're like, because even like the worst of the worst, they almost feel like they need some justification to attack you, you know. I remember this one little scut that used to, you know, a real short arse little weak man, but they've got a mouth on them, you know. They can fucking talk alright. And he was like saying stuff to me and giving me a load of shit, and I just got up, ran into him, shoved him into a desk, and he smashed his head off it. And naturally, like, that's something where you're like, oh my god, you are a danger to the rest of the class. You're kind of going, yeah, I know, but didn't see what he fucking did, you know. I feel like we mouth off a lot, like, in today's society, and a lot of people would have been put in their place a few years ago. We let the wrong kinds of people off the hook. We're too empathetic or too sympathetic, because you can't really empathise with someone unless you've been there yourself. I was looking up the definition. Did you ever get the two mixed up? Sympathy is not necessarily understanding exactly what the person is going through, but being like, I imagine that's a very difficult situation and I'm sorry for that. It could be a negative thing, you don't be sympathising all the time. Where are you going? Good lad. Go. Get over here. Just keep him safe. Empathy is, I've been through some shit, so like, let's say I have depression, I understand somewhat what you're going through. That would be able to empathise with someone, but sympathy would be, oh, they've had a hard life, so, you know, they're a scumbag, they're a little rat going around threatening everybody and threatening to stab people. Oh, but they've had a hard life, so leave them off. If you bring a dangerous weapon into a school, you have endangered everyone. If there's a dangerous weapon around, the likelihood of someone getting seriously injured, as you'd imagine, goes way up. Expel the fucker, kick him out. Don't give him an opportunity to come back in and to do what he fucking did. And then we'll say, oh, isn't it fucking tragic? You could have prevented that. Schools have a lot to answer for. Or you could do what America does. I actually think they're right, you know. Because they won't ban guns or make it harder for you to own a gun, They've metal detectors in schools. I don't actually think that's a bad idea. I mean, if it stops people getting fucking stabbed, you can't object to a metal detector if you're not bringing anything metal and illegal in. And I don't give a shit about all this GDPR stuff. They should have pat downs, especially if you've had history of attacking other students. Like, look at Carl Panzram, how impulsive he was, how much of a desire he had to do wrong, and also how he wasn't deterred by consequences. Look at that. There are still people like that who are not deterred by consequences. I think people get that arseways. They look at it, and they looked at the Carl Panzram case, because I'm fascinated by it. People are not seeing the bigger picture. They're like, do you realise you're not going to win here? You know, like when he attacked wardens and guards, you're going to get a severe punishment here. And they're laughing at him, and I'm just there going, are you stupid? Do you not see that that's the whole point? That's antisocial personality disorder. They are not deterred by consequences. If you look at it, you punish them, they're just going to do it again. They don't give a shit if you punish them harshly. They'll come straight back at you, 10 times harder in many cases. That's what separates it from narcissism. Well, lad, they're going to just keep on coming at you, you know, which he proved. So look at those telltale signs and go, look at this case. Look at how many times he offended. Look at his impulse to do wrong, his poor impulse control. Stop coming at it from a very tiptoe, narrow-minded perspective. Start fucking admitting that there are bad people out there. Don't think anyone's born evil, but they can certainly be made that way. And without the right intervention, like you can see with Carl Panzram, harsh, cruel punishment did not work. But pussyfooting and being a do-gooder doesn't work either. I don't say harsh punishment, but you should certainly kick them out of school if they're a danger to everybody else. I'll stop. Goodbye. And I would call this cautious kindness. Try and show empathy. Try and reach out to them. That actually seemed to work with Carl Panzram a few times. Like, he was in the marching band in a prison that he was in because the warden showed him kindness. He actually contributed a lot for once, which is rare to say. It's just unfortunate that someone didn't get to him sooner and show him a bit of kindness before. Your early years are so important. Look at the parents, you know. Child Protective Services need to do more to make sure the kids don't end up like that. Because a kid that attacks another kid in that manner is mentally ill, but they're dangerously mentally ill. You know, doing something like that to another kid, like, you are messed up, and clearly something has gone awry in your life if you think that's okay. You've been desensitised to violence, and that's a very difficult thing to undo. But the younger you get them, the better, because the older they get, the more dangerous they are, the bigger and stronger they get. Like, Carl Panzram was said to be a massive hulking man, like, and he was a farmer, so I mean, farmer strength. He was said to be a very intimidating man. A lot of psychiatrists say he's the scariest. He'd be the one they'd be most afraid of being in a room with, because you can't reason with them. You could reason with Ted Bundy or David Berkowitz. Carl Panzram, I think, is such a good case for ASPD as opposed to NPD, because you can't reason with them. You can't stroke his ego and please him. You can just hope he doesn't decide to go fucking savage on you. He didn't love himself, he hated himself. That made him very dangerous, and he was big and strong and physically imposing. We've got to do better, guys. We've got to learn from the past, and we've got to do better. And I hope shit like this doesn't happen in the future, but I fear it will. I'll leave it on that note, guys. See you in the next one.